Driver's Ed, Chapter 11, page 154. Morgan rarely went into his father's study. Dad would invariably set down his pen, turn away from his computer, drop his paper. His father would want to talk, and since Morgan had not talked in years, entering the study had become impossible. He did not want to talk this time either, or sit. He didn't want to be in the tall oak chairs with their plump cushions and face that desk with its litter of notes, clippings, files, plans, calendars, and schedules. What would he get from somebody he'd shut out for so long? Dad doesn't own a gun, so he can't actually shoot the person who took the stop sign, but he might kick me out. Where would I go? He'd had running away fantasies. What kid didn't? Vanishing onto a bus or a train, hitchhiking to adventure, living on vending machine potato chips and smoking the discarded cigarette butts of other travelers. He didn't want that. He wanted the exact outline of life his parents had drawn up for him, perfection and success. Well, I'm off to a great start, he thought. His gut hurt, nodding as if he had gone swimming too far out in water too cold. He wanted his father to be good and moral and upright, to be just, the kind of person people ached to vote for. But almost as much, he wanted his father to paint over it, hide what happened to Denise Thompson from Morgan himself as well as from the world. The collar of Dad's button-down Oxford shirt made a little white line above a heavy navy pullover. The knot of his tie hung to the side where he had loosened it. Dad looked up from his work, startled by the sight of Morgan, and instantly looked back down, memorizing where he was so the interruption wouldn't ruin his work. Doesn't matter where you are, Dad. I'm about to ruin your work and your life, but hey, you have a teenage son. That's the risk you run. Morgan could not even take a deep breath. His lungs disobeyed him. Dad? Even the one syllable snapped in the middle. His father did not, as in the past, jump up. In that awful silent moment, Morgan felt from his father what his father had always felt from him. No interest. He held himself terribly still. He would not break down. It would be cheating. You wanted danger, he said to himself. You got it. You worthless, whimpering cipher. Denise Thompson didn't want danger. She wanted to live. You took that from her. Admit it, you coward. Dad, he said again, and his voice broke. His father looked shocked and was out from behind his desk, crossing the room swiftly, wrapping his arms around Morgan. Probably thought Morgan had lost his girlfriend or didn't make the team. The strength under the heavy wool sweater was amazing, as if Dad were the one who did the weightlifting, as if those arms could hold Morgan up out of trouble in which they were both going to drown. What is it? Said his father, already in gear to be sympathetic and understanding. Dad had the right to assume a son of his would never do something that wrong. Other people's kids, but not his. It would mark Mom and Dad as failed parents, people whose children went bad. Dad, he said at last, because the only thing worse than telling his father was not telling. I'm the one who took the stop sign. Remy had said the words. They were out. It was her parents who said nothing. They stared at Remy as if she were packaged in a foreign language, then at each other, their lives no longer comprehensible. Henry, sensing the good stuff was happening and he wasn't a part of it, screamed like police cars going to a hijacking to be let out of his playpen. Mac hoisted him up, setting Matt's fat padded rear on the kitchen counter next to him. Henry immediately wanted the sugar bowl, the paper towels, and the tip of ivy hanging from the planter. You would think in times of crisis that a 1-year-old could give it a rest. I thought I was a good mother. Mom's voice was as thin and sharp as a razor. You are, cried Remy. It isn't your fault. Good parents don't have children who do things like that. It was only a sign, said Mac quickly. She couldn't know anybody would die, and if she didn't actually take it, she was waiting in the car. She's 16, said Dad. Why did she think a stop sign was put there? She must at least have suspected that there was a purpose to the sign. Oh, God, God! Shouted their mother, as if he would come if they raised their voices enough. God wasn't there, said Remy. What do you mean he wasn't there? He let Denise Thompson die, cried Remy. Excuse me, said her mother. The anger in her was ratcheting up. God did not let Mrs. Thompson die. God doesn't have wrenches and hacksaws. He doesn't supervise dangerous intersections. That's your job. God is a spirit. He brings strength of mind and character. He didn't bring me strength of character. He would have if you'd asked. Remy tried to imagine herself as they hefted the tool in their hands, looking toward the stars and calling for character. What if I'd asked? Would Denise Thompson still be alive? But she had never thought of asking. She'd been full of her crush on Morgan and had thought only of Morgan asking her out. Her mother was possessed by fury that consumed her body. She was red hot from rage. Her mother advanced on her. Remy felt her mother had grown claws and a beak, wanted to rip her flesh like a vulture. You and Morgan caused Mrs. Thompson to die. Admit it. Admit that you are responsible. Her mother's eyes were glittering. Remy backed up into the wall while Henry screamed the screams she wanted to scream. I do admit it, Mommy, said Remy, sobbing. That's what I'm doing now. I'm admitting it. I've done a terrible thing. Her loud, swear-happy father wept. She'd never seen him cry. He left the screaming to Mom as if he himself had broken. Yes, you have, honey, he said. If it had been the act of a moment, I could understand it better. I could understand suddenly deciding this would be fun. But this was so planned. It was a strategy with assignments. You brought tools. You planned cover-ups. Remy didn't, said Mac. Remy was, excuse me, said their mother. Remy agreed to go on a sign-stealing expedition. Remy knew she wasn't going over to Lark's to watch movies. It was not a date. A date is something happy and good. They were vandalizing a little. They all knew the words Mom wanted to use and were all stunned and sick with such words could apply to Remy. Mac was her only ally. Remy thought of Mac like God, solid and present and a total surprise. But Mac, like God, solved nothing. He was there, and that was supposed to be enough. It's not enough, thought Remy. I want to be rescued. I want that night back. She saw right down her mother's soul like a doctor looking down a throat, and she saw her mother knowing more than she did. There were no rescues, and there was no going back. A woman was dead. Mom went rigid the way the baby did. Arms taut at her side, jaw sprung, teeth clenched. How could you do this to me? I've been a good mother. I've done the right things with you. I have done my best. Remy held her hands flat in front of her face as if she thought her mother would rain blows upon her. Mac, desperate and furious at everybody, chose to yell at Henry, who was at least able to control himself. The family was rioting. They had turned into a mob. I know, Mommy, said Remy. You did do your best. It's me, Mommy. I didn't do my best. I'm sorry. There was a time of stillness, a space in which both their hearts raced double time. Morgan's father drew back from him to stare into his face. The muscles of his father's jaw and shoulders grew tight and froze into position. Dad's eyes opened a little too wide and stayed there, seeing things he refused to see. I won't fall apart, Morgan ordered himself. I won't be a little boy. I'm 16. The stop sign, breathed his father, pulling farther back. Where Denise Thompson was killed? You took that? All the weightlifting in the world did not give Morgan control over his own muscles. He began coming apart, as if tendons no longer connected muscle to bone. It was not the sign that mattered. The sign was nothing. Only Denise Thompson mattered, and she was gone. Oh, Dad, I killed her. The air came out of his father slowly, like a tire going down. Dad, said Morgan, unable to swallow, his throat swelling, his fingers thickening. Slowly, heavily, His father sat down on the wooden visitor chair and pulled Morgan, all 6 feet 2 of him, all 160 pounds of him, onto his lap. His father's rough cheek pressed against his. He said nothing, just held his son. Morgan tried to explain how it had happened. "Shh," said his father. "I don't want to keep it a secret anymore, Dad. I have to tell." His father said, "Shh," again. "Dad, I can't hide out. I don't want you to hide me. I've tried that, and it doesn't go away." "We're not hiding," said his father painfully. "It's just not time for talk yet. Just let me hang on for a while. I've got to let my mind catch up to this." His father brushed possessive hands through Morgan's hair as if Morgan were a baby, innocent and deserving. After a long time, Dad said, "I think you weigh more than I do." Morgan got up from a lap he had not sat in for a long, long time, helped his father up, stood there unable to think clearly about anything, much less his father. "Tell me everything," said his father. "I love you, Morgan. Just level with me. We'll need it all." "Who drove?" said Remy's father abruptly. Remy pressed her lips together. "Nicky Buddy," said Mom. "I looked out the window and saw that little scum, and I almost told Remy she couldn't go, and then I thought, well, you have to trust them sometime. You have to give them independence eventually. And here we've bought her a car, and we're going to trust her with driving her brothers all over the city, so of course I can trust her too." Mom gave Remy a hard, terrible smile. Dad said, "It was an accident, Jeanie." Her name was Imogene. He called her Jeanie when he was in love with her. How can Dad be in love with her when she's so angry, thought Mac. "It was not an accident," shouted Mom. "You don't spend 15 minutes with a hacksaw and call that an accident. Is this why you quit the basketball team, Remy? Is this why you didn't want Henry in the pageant? Are you trying to hide out, blame others, crawl under a rock where you belong? Jeanie, that won't help." Mom looked at the man who was her husband. "And that will help? Tell me that. What will bring Denise Thompson back?" Henry chose this time to refuse bed, hate the cookies offered as bribes, and generally outdo himself at being cranky and obnoxious. Along with everything else, they had to tolerate the baby because they couldn't take out their rage on him. The desire to smack Henry became the major desire in the household. Because that we could do, thought Mac. The one thing we could really do now is shut Henry up. We all want to hit something, and he's making the most noise. Remy went through Kleenex after Kleenex. "I'm sorry, Mommy." She was speaking to their mother and not their father. Mac wondered if Dad saw and was hurt by that. Why did Mom's opinion matter more to Remy's than Dad's? Mac saw confusedly that he too would worry more about Mom's opinion. In some way he had not previously noticed this was her household, her family, her rules. "I was worried about the basketball team," said Dad. He gave a funny little laugh. "I was upset because I'd sort of built my winter plans on going to all the girls' games," he said. "Did you do the mailbox basketball too, Remy?" "Dad, I'd never do a thing like that." "Oh, good. She has standards," said Mom, rage like venom pouring out of her mouth. "Jeanie, sarcasm won't help either." Mac wanted Dad not to be scolding Mom. It wasn't helping. Mom's right, he thought. Nothing can help. "I want not to have done it," Remy said. "I've been trying to think it undone, praying it unhappened." His pretty sister was unraveling, pulling at her hair and touching her face as if placing band-aids on hurts. "But I did do it," she said, and the sobs burst out in terrible, jagged hiccups. "Oh, Mom, I can't bear it." Mom's anger left as swiftly as it had come, leaving her wilted like an old flower, ready for discard. Mac saw how his mother would look in old age. The last thing that Mac expected was for the Campbell's BMW to arrive in front of the house and for the two lawyer parents of Morgan to get out, on each side of their son, escorting him up the Marlins' front walk as if into court. It is court, thought Mac. We're going to try Morgan and Remy. If they present a good enough case, we'll stand by them, and if they don't, they're on their own.